The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it, a Friday editions here at Hail Varsity Radio. We are presented by Currency. For all of your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Elijah Herbel, joined here in just a second by Chris Schmidt. We'll get to him as he joins us from the car in Iowa. But first, let's let you know what we've got coming your way today, as we've got a little bit later this hour, Jacob Padilla joining us at 4:25, and then we missed him on Monday, so Charlie McBride's going to be joining us around 4:40. So we're excited to get caught up with those two. Later in hour two, our usual Friday guests will have Bill Doleman joining us at 5:05 and Brady Oltmans joining us at 5:25, as we've got some recruiting news to talk about with Brady Oltmans. We'll get into all that just a little bit later. A reminder that if you want to get connected with the show today, give us a call, 402-489-1240, or follow along on the live stream. That's Hail Varsity's Twitter page at HVarsity Radio, or the Hail Varsity YouTube page, or our home station KFOR is live streaming the show on their Facebook and Twitter accounts as well. Without any further ado, it's been a while since we've heard from you, Schmidty. You join us from the car in Iowa. How's the baseball week been? We miss you, and it's good to hear from you here on a Friday.
Hey, thanks for reaching out, Elijah. Good to spend time with you. It is raining in Marion, Iowa. What you guys got in Lincoln early this morning, without the hail, of course, is making its way here towards eastern. We're about, 30 minutes north of Iowa City, and got absolutely woodshedded earlier today. But we want the rain to go away and a chance to redeem ourselves, so to speak, in game two that's about to get underway here in a couple of minutes. So that's what's been going on. Pretty good news for Nebraska on the recruiting front, Elijah, with looks like Nebraska's lined up two more guys at some point to round out this offensive line class. I know you've been following that today.
Yeah. Preston Taumua was the name that was on everyone's mind last night, as a couple crystal balls flipping in the favor of Nebraska. Let's give you a little background on Preston, as we'll talk about him a little bit with Brady Oltmans later today. A 6'4", 315-pound, currently listed as an offensive tackle. Some recruiting services have him listed as an interior offensive lineman. I wonder, though, with what Nebraska's class currently sits at, whether or not they're going to be looking at him as an offensive tackle. He hails from Hawaii in the class of 2024, and he's had a real who's who of college football after him in this recruiting cycle, as they've been going for the Hawaiians, and the big Hawaiians on the offensive line always feel like they're a presence on that front five. Nebraska, Oregon, Alabama, Auburn, Arizona, Florida, Miami, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Utah, Washington are all schools that have offered Taumua, and it sounds like he was impressed with his visit that he took back to Nebraska on June 19th. He followed it up with a visit to Oregon the following weekend, but it appears as if the winds are shifting towards Nebraska's favor following that Nebraska and Oregon visit. And then this is also important because Nebraska is still waiting on an announcement from Grant Brix, as Grant Brix is another guy whose winds seemingly have shifted towards Nebraska in recent weeks. And when you look at those two, Schmidty, it can round out what your offensive line class already is, with a couple of interior offensive line guys already in the boat.
Yep, three interior guys. Nebraska still trying to chase down both tackles. I think Brix is a guy that you feel good about, but time will tell if it's officially official. Taumua, though, I mean, just think of that pipeline. Nebraska, not often, but occasionally going to Hawaii. And you look at how incredible Dom Raiola was, and that was George Darlington leading that recruiting out on the islands. But I mean, that's home turf, right, for Coach Raiola here and his Hawaiian connection. And yeah, if you're Nebraska, you want to be able to use that to your advantage. It sounds like that's gone well. I know Oregon has won their fair share of offensive line recruiting battles, specifically during the Cristobal era. But, if Nebraska sees a window to get Taumua and Coach Donnie's leading the way on that, that to me says really big things for Nebraska with maybe some future Hawaiian pipeline opportunities. But you got to get that first. And if you get Taumua in, great size. You mentioned his versatility, where some services have him at that interior spot. But I think they like what they have with his athleticism. I think they like what they could have with his footwork. Clearly, you need that at this level. But I also think that the speed and the strength combination that is maybe a difference maker when we get to Big Ten play down the road is a real win if Nebraska is to get this commitment from this young man. And I look at just how agile, just from some of the film we've looked at, that is so big for this offensive line, especially with Nebraska wanting to get the power game going and also the counter game going with this run offense that Coach Rule desires.
And that's one thing you notice in Tauua's film, as you laid out, Schmidty, is the agility. How many times they have this guy in high school pulling around and leading the way, being your lead blocker on a counter play. They have him getting up to linebacker a ton. And something that really stands out to me is how refined his pass protection game already looks. And this is in limited reps. This is what gets posted up on Twitter and on the highlight pages. But there was one rep in particular at a camp from this summer that really stood out to me, because it's a high-level technique where the pass rusher was going for the long arm technique, coming around the side, keeping him off the body. And Preston almost immediately chops the arm down, gets that D lineman's hand off him, and throws his center of balance completely off and is able to go drive him into the dirt behind the quarterback. And I saw that play, and immediately my eyes got big, because that's the guy that's got really, really high-level pass protection technique. And it's something that is unique to him among the guys Nebraska's been going after. You've seen a lot of guys in this recruiting cycle that Nebraska loves because of their ability to get off the ball and drive block their defensive linemen in front of them. What's interesting about Taumua, it's not that that's a weakness to his game, but it's definitely not the strength to his game. His ability to move his feet, be agile, get low, get up to linebackers really, really has impressed me in this cycle. Another thing that stands out to me whenever you look at him and really all the offensive linemen that Nebraska has and are going after in this class is it's a stark departure to what Nebraska currently has on the roster. Because you think about what Nebraska has on these rosters: 6'7", 6'8", 6'6" guys, 315 pounds. We've bemoaned their agility in recent months and years. And you look at who's currently in the boat: Gibson Pyle, 6'4", 285 pounds. You have Landon Davison, 6'4", 308 pounds. You have Jake Peters, 6'3", 265 pounds. Then you look at the two guys Nebraska's hard after right now. Grant Brick stands just over 6'5" at 280. And then you have Preston Taumua, who's just over 6'4" at 315 pounds. These are guys that are going to be able to utilize leverage, and you would hope be able to get low, get under the pads of some Big Ten defensive linemen. And they don't have the frames that NFL scouts are going to salivate over, but it's guys that really remind me of the Raiola family and of Dom, guys that are a little bit maybe undersized, a little bit shorter than the rest of the Big Ten, but they've got some nasty to them. They've got that leverage to them, and damn, are they going to push you around on the football field?
Well, and listen, you have a prototype you want. There's an NFL prototype for sure, but what's been ongoing with Nebraska in the recruiting world has been giants, right? 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" in some instances. Well, we're waiting on Teddy to get 100% healthy and come on back. He's looked able, right, to handle the power side of things when he's been healthy. Limited action, I know we've seen, but also in the pass pro. But it's okay to go a couple inches shorter. And if you like a kid and you think he fits, that's first and foremost. You'll deal with the height. But from a pad level and getting low or lower than the Big Ten defensive lineman, yeah, I mean, that's a hard ask, Elijah. You were a tall offensive lineman and still are, but I'm saying your high school years, you were as tall as I remember in the city, right? Because you went about, what, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6"?
Oh, you're giving me some there. We'll call it 6'3".
Okay, so but the point is you were probably one of the taller offensive linemen on your team.
Yeah, that's fair.
And in the city, but that requires a lot of bend for guys to get low and hit that point of attack. One guy that was enormous, to go back to the Hawaiian pipeline, Tony Tata was a linebacker. Of course, we mentioned Dom Raiola, award winner. But second-team All-American, second-round pick, Tony Finoti was on those late 90s, early 2000s lines. And Finoti was a giant, a monster, and played really high-level football for Nebraska. Another Hawaiian kid that Coach Darlington landed, and Tony had a really decorated career in Lincoln, finished second for the Outland and I think Lombardi to Mount McKinney. You probably don't remember him because you were still in a crib, but the vaunted offensive lineman from Miami in that 2001 class. So if Nebraska can open the door, keep that door open, and use some of the advantages they have with Coach Donnie, keep going to Hawaii. There are uber talented kids with Polynesian background that really, really can thrive on both sides of the line of scrimmage. But spend a minute. I know you wanted to bring this up, and you'll talk with Doleman about it in a little bit. But Coach Pat Fitzgerald getting a 2-week unpaid suspension by the chancellor at Northwestern goes back to some instances that have been ongoing, perhaps Camp Kenosha. We've heard Coach Barnett talk about it, and we've heard Coach Fitzgerald really underline its importance. That has been disbanded. You have hazing incidents that have not been made to the public, other than there's been an ongoing climate of hazing, culture of hazing at Northwestern, and Northwestern's chancellor has spoken. That's awful for Fitz. You've seen back-to-back really tough seasons, 3-9 and a 1-11 for Fitz, and that's just right after a couple of 9-3 seasons or the COVID year where he got to the Big Ten championship game twice in a 4-year span. I mean, Wisconsin and Iowa, more so Wisconsin, about the only school that's gone multiple times. Iowa's been there a couple too, but he's put kids in the first round, the second round, fifth round. They've had a slew of draft picks here the last few years. They've just had a tough last couple of seasons, and now Fitz gets hammered publicly and financially by the university. And if you're a Pat Fitzgerald fan, which I am, I know you are, and he'll address it here in about 3 weeks, hopefully with us and other members of the media when it comes to Big Ten Media Days. This is not good. You've had losing seasons, back-to-back losing seasons, and now you have an official verbal reprimand and a suspension. And the between the lines read on this is, well, okay, so you didn't know what was going on. Fine. You've had enough time to keep your ear to the ground and know something was going on. And while hazing is traumatic for some, depending on how severe, and we don't know how severe it is. It's part of that locker room ownership that is necessary, but there's also a line you can't cross. And I don't know how serious or how bad the line was crossed and how many times it has been crossed, but Fitzgerald took it on the chin today, and that's no good for college football.
No good for college football, and you just wonder about his future at Northwestern, as you kind of laid out with what the results have been in the past couple years. I know he's got a contract that extends through 2030, and you also have a sparkling football facility that opened a couple years ago. You have plans for a brand new stadium, and both of those, you could argue, Fitz built the football facility, Fitz built the stadium, but now you see the results suffering. You see what's going on with this suspension and with what some people would maybe call a lack of control over your football program, and you wonder, could Northwestern, if the results suffer this year, try to use this as a firing with cause And that seems like after everything Fitzgerald has done for your program, it seems like it'd leave a bad taste in the mouth of at least me with what he did with that Northwestern football program. But I think that's one place you have to go and say, hey, Fitz, we appreciate everything you did for our football program, but what you've been doing and what's been working for you for years clearly isn't working right now. And could another bad season be the end of the road for Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern?
This is kind of a preemptive move if I'm the administration academically. Listen, the Northwestern AD that hired him and has overseen success athletically, he's going into his second year as the commissioner of the ACC, okay? And you have a different boss you've been working under. I don't know if it's the same chancellor or not at Northwestern, but to me, you've got and Northwestern's an incredible institution, but yeah, they're going to swing their big stick from the academic side of things. And all Fitz has done is, with incredible academic entrance requirements, all he's done is recruit nationally, find kids, make them better, and, oh yeah, by the way, sent a lot of them to the NFL. If I'm Fitz, I don't know if the AD chair was something I eyed at one time. I don't know if that's still a reality. Doesn't sound like it's a great situation now, obviously. So, yeah, if I'm Fitz, and Fitz has been courted by the Bears. Fitz has been courted by Texas. Fitz has been courted by a lot of programs that would kill to have him. Mm-hmm. And he stayed pretty loyal to Northwestern. Whatever happens this year, get out, dude. Go find that NFL job or go find a different college football program, because they went public with you. And listen, we don't know the severity of it. You don't ever want someone's life in danger. And I don't know that that's the case. Is it some kids that ran to administration over X number of years because of an attempt to make them more mentally tough? Football's a different era now with not much leadway than 5 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly when Fitz was roaming the sidelines in Northwestern. So he needs to get out, and they were lucky to have him as long as they did.
Agreed. Schmidty, we'll let you get back to the baseball diamond. Hopefully that rain blows over for you, as we got plenty more to get into. We'll get more into Pat Fitzgerald with Bill Doleman at next hour. But coming up after the break, we'll sit down with Jacob Padilla, talk some hoops. Got a couple of Huskers in the Summer League. That's coming your way after the break.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
We're back in on a Friday edition here at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. A big thank you to Schmidty joining us for the first segment of the show today, as he checked in from the passenger seat of his car out in Iowa before a baseball game. So we get a little bit of insight from Schmidty on a Friday. We're excited to welcome into the show now Jacob Padilla, staff writer for Hail Varsity Magazine. And Jacob, I understand you're down in Houston. It's been a bit of an adventure getting down there. How are you doing today as you're out in the high school basketball circuit yet again?
Good. We're down here in Houston for the Pro 16 League Finals, which is the New Balance circuit that we're playing on. And my 15s are off to a 2-0 start in bracket play. We're into the quarterfinals already. So, like you said, it's been an adventure getting down here. We were sitting at the airport in Omaha trying to get out, and our pilot was still in Chicago. Weather up there prevented the flight that was supposed to head from Chicago to Omaha from taking off. So we had to sit around for a while and kind of wait for them to figure that out. And then once we got to Dallas, we were worried that our connecting flight was that we weren't going to make it. But that got pushed back too. So everything got pushed back. We didn't get into our hotel here until like 11:30 Wednesday night, but didn't show any impact with our play the next morning, thankfully. And here we are into the Elite Eight.
Well, Jacob, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe you're coaching the 15U team this summer here. Yep. And from what I know about 15-year-olds that they rarely lack energy no matter how much sleep they get.
Yeah, that's a nice thing. And I got 10 this weekend. This is the first time that we actually are at full strength since the very first weekend of the spring. So it's good to have all the guys together down here and spend a lot of time together. Definitely showing great chemistry on the court. We handled both the first two teams that we played and did so in great team fashion, sharing the ball and a lot of different guys involved, and just really fun start to this tournament.
Tell us a little bit about this tournament, Jacob, while we're here. It's down in Houston. I believe it's a big regional tournament. What types of teams are you playing, and what are you trying to learn about your team here as we wrap up this tournament weekend through tomorrow and Sunday?
Yeah, so people are aware of kind of how the AAU basketball works. You've got the shoe circuit leagues. Nike EYBL is the most famous, and then you've got the Adidas 3SFB where ETG plays on. You've got the Under Armour Association, and we are on a brand new league, the New Balance League. So it's kind of, they're trying to break out. This is the first year for it, and they had multiple events kind of throughout the spring to qualify teams. You've got the Pro 16 teams, which are the sponsor teams. That includes our team, Nebraska Supreme, our program. And then you got a bunch of teams that are kind of in the second division that could play their way into this Houston tournament.
Jacob, with all the high-level talent on display down there, what college coaches have you seen down there? You mentioned that the coaches are out in full force. Which coaches have you seen down there out scouting some players out?
It's been a ton of coaches bouncing. I know Nate Lenzer made a stop for Nebraska on day one on his way. I think he was heading to Cincinnati, but made a stop in Houston to see some kids on the first day. Ollie Farokmanesh, kind of a Nebraska tie there, was on the staff for a couple of years, now assistant coach at Colorado State, ran into him. A lot of JUCO coaches are here because there's a JUCO event that's part of this, and a lot of coaches looking at JUCO kids. The JA48 JUCO Advocate kind of partnered with Pro 16, X-Pro to, they've had kind of this JUCO showcase at each of these tournaments. So I get a chance for some select JUCO players to get in front of these Division I coaches that are here for the live periods anyway. So they've attracted a bunch of coaches. I mean, it's just a wide variety of people here, seeing kind of from all different levels at the Division I, checking out the tournament.
Jacob, you mentioned the fact that Nate Lenzer is out on the recruiting trail, and I feel like we ask this question every single week. Maybe it's time to get our weekly update with the Husker basketball coaching staff out recruiting for the class of 2024 and beyond. Does that mean the 2023 roster is finally set in stone, or do you still think there's going to be some movement between now and late October?
Kind of the same mind that I've been. We've seen their name continue to pop up with kids that have entered the portal late, and I'm sure that'll probably be the case if somebody that they deem would fit into what they're trying to do enters the portal here. I'm sure they'd reach out, but at this point, with kind of the roster the way it is, they've got two spots to fill, but it's not like they have we absolutely need this, and you walk in, you're day one, 30-minute a game starter or whatever. Like they've got a lot of guys that could potentially be rotation players here, and I mean they'll give it a shot. But I don't necessarily know like you want to go recruit over the guy that you just recruited. To like say go out and get another wing with a similar skill set to like a Bryce Williams or something like that. So I don't know, and it's also tough. Like ideally, what they're looking for is kind of like a 12th man, like a developmental big or kind of an insurance big in case Blake Keita's ankles give him problems again. And that's just hard to do. It's like hard to find a kid that has options. Like we saw with the kid that went to 10 miles in San Jose State, the transfer from Washington State or whatever it was, the big guy is Nebraska was kind of involved there, but at San Jose State, he had a chance to play right away. And after kind of spending a year developing as a highly touted recruit, as their first year at Washington State, wasn't really looking to do that again at another high major. So he dropped down to a mid-major where all the chance to play a lot more early on. So I think it's going to be tough at this point to find someone unless they just take an absolute flyer, which we've seen them do in the past where they've just taken some kids late to fill out the roster that probably were stretches that weren't going to end up ever contributing at Nebraska. Doesn't seem like they've really done that this time. They've been content to kind of roll with who they have, and part of that could be kind of the confidence in the walk-ons they have to provide a little bit more depth than your traditional walk-on, as we've seen someone like Sam Hoiberg contribute down the stretch last season and was legitimately good playing in the Big Ten. So that's a guy that you get past those 11 scholarship guys, but really that's a 12th player that you can consider as part of the rotation and give you good practice minutes and all that. And Cale Jacobson could be similar there. So I think that kind of helps them out a little bit. I'm sure, again, if something pops up, they'll explore it. I just, at this point, I'm not expecting, I think this is probably what it's going to be unless they kind of hit the lottery.
So Jacob Padilla with us here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. You can find and follow Jacob on Twitter at @JacobPadilla_. And Jacob, let's switch gears here, talk some NBA Summer League, as I want to get your thoughts. Are you going to be tuning in tonight to the debut of Victor Wembanyama? He's had some drama this week. I'm not sure if you've ever been asked for a picture from Britney Spears in Vegas in your lifetime, but Victor Wembanyama has reached that point. He's dealing with that drama, and tonight he makes his NBA, or at least expected to make his NBA Summer League debut. What do you want to see from him, and what do you make of the expectations surrounding Victor Wembanyama? Some are calling him the best prospect since LeBron.
Yeah, I'm glad that's the ESPN game and not an NBA TV game, considering we don't have that here in the hotel. So I will be planning to tune in. We'll be done for the day with all the games that I need to follow here by then. So yeah, I'm excited to see kind of what it looks like. And I did tune in when to that showcase that they had with the G League Ignite when he and Scoot Henderson just put on an absolute show to kind of kickstart the campaign for like, oh wow, this draft class is incredible. So, and I haven't watched him play since. I've just seen the clips. I haven't seen actual real live gameplay because I'm not following overseas basketball with everything else I've got to keep track of. So, yeah, I think they sold out the arena. It's like a 19,000 seat arena, and they sold it out for Friday because he was expected to make his debut, which kind of tells you where basketball fans are in terms of excitement level for this guy. And unfortunately, Bryce McGowan and the Charlotte Hornets are going to be on the other side of that game, and they've really had a rough go of it so far in Summer League. So hopefully they can figure some things out and can make it a competitive game and one that's fun to watch for fans.
You know, I've seen that Charlotte Hornets team called the worst professional basketball roster ever assembled. I'm not sure if you want to dive into that at all, but Brandon Miller has not lived up to expectations early in his Summer League career, more fouls than points, and I'm sure Brandon Miller was expecting more for himself. But Jacob, while we're talking NBA Summer League, let's switch gears here and talk about two Huskers in the Summer League, Sam Griesel and Delano Banton, both playing with the Celtics Summer League roster. I want you to quickly dive into the fit with Delano Banton in the Celtics and what you want to see from those guys in Summer League.
Yeah, certainly an interesting move for him and for them. Boston, they obviously made some roster moves here. The guard court's a little different now with Marcus Smart on there, and they didn't have a ton of guard depth. Obviously, they had Peyton Pritchard that was kind of in and out of the rotation last year, but off the bench, you had a couple bigs there. Like, they didn't go very deep. So I think Banton, if he can show some continued progress, he's got to figure out how to be effective in the half court. But he's good in transition, and I think he'll have a chance there to give them some help during the regular season. We'll see, again, kind of how deep of a bench that they go with this next year. Certainly, he's kind of in that place that Isaiah Roby's been in too, where you're good enough to be in the league. There's a lot of teams that are intrigued with you, but you haven't necessarily got to that point where you kind of solidified yourself as a NBA rotation player that's going to be around for a long time. So there's a lot riding for him here as he begins with his second team. And Summer League it would be a great start if he kind of steps out here and effective and shows like, hey, you probably don't need to be here. That's always kind of the thing you're looking for with Summer League, with second, third-year players. It's like, like he's got this figured out. And that's certainly kind of the chance for him to make his first impression with Celtics decision makers and coaches and with the fans as well. So, and then Sam Greasel, he's obviously on the team too, another big guard. So it's kind of two guys that are somewhat different styles but do some similar things. Just kind of as a taller, longer point guard. I know Sam's is going to have opportunities overseas with his dual citizenship with over in Germany. So he's got a nice little fallback no matter what happens here, I believe. But I'm sure it's going to be a dream come true for him to kind of be out there playing in NBA jersey and in front of fans out there and playing with some of these other guys. So really good opportunity for him to kind of just kickstart his professional career wherever it may take him.
You can find him and follow him on Twitter at Jacob Padilla _ Jacob Padilla, kind enough to give us a few minutes of his time down in Houston. And Jacob, we thank you, and we wish you luck the rest of the weekend with this tournament. We'll chat next week. All right, bud? All
right, sounds good. Thanks.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
It's a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. We are presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Elijah Herbel running the board and taking you through this Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. As we've already heard from Schmidty, he joined us from Iowa for the first segment of the show. He's off watching some baseball now. Jacob Padilla joined us last segment. We now welcome Charlie McBride to the show. It's a Friday with Charlie. We're used to catching up with you on Monday. Charlie, how you doing? How's the 4th of July holiday? We appreciate you taking some time out of your Friday for us.
Well, it's been a little wild here because I got some family here, and if anybody hears a dog barking in the back, this guy is crazy. He wants to go in and out. You know, he can't make up his mind, but when he does, he barks. So that's if anybody hears that, it's not my dog.
Well, to tell us a little bit about the dog. How old is he or she? What breed? I need to get a picture in my head of what kind of dog we're going to be listening for in the background.
Oh, this dog is lab and smart, and that's why he's too smart. He wants to go in with one person, and then one person comes in, and then he has two leaders. If one goes out next, then he wants to go out with her or him, and I mean it's like who knows what. And I have my truck, my old truck went to the truck hospital this week, so we fooled with that, and it's been wild.
Well, Charlie, I think the big positive to take away from it is you've made it to the weekend, right?
Yeah, we didn't have any 8-inch pipe bombs this year to go off. But, we have one guy that makes them, puts newspaper in them, and he did it next door, and he blew a big hole in the front of his house. So, we cut that one out.
It's Charlie McBride with us here on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. Charlie kind enough to take a little bit of time out of his Friday afternoon for us because we didn't hear from him on Monday with the holiday weekend. And Charlie, let's dive into some Husker football here as the story of the day. Nebraska maybe getting a little bit closer to finalizing their recruiting classes. They've got some crystal balls for 2 offensive linemen, Grant Bricks and Preston Taumua. And something Schmidty and I talked about back in the first segment of the show, Charlie, was that these offensive linemen don't fit the mold of what Nebraska's been bringing in for the past 5 years. They're a little bit shorter, a little bit more agile. And I want to get your experience coaching the lines of scrimmage. What do you make of offensive linemen that are a little bit shorter, especially in the Big Ten Conference? I struggle to call them undersized because these are still 6'4" guys who are pushing 300 pounds. They're still giants. But compared to what Nebraska's had on their offensive line over the past couple seasons, it's a little bit different and a little bit of a stylistic change from Coach Raiola.
Well, I did both of them, and I can tell you, just when you say 6'4", when you're a running football team, I went through about 15 years of being an offensive line coach in the Big Ten at Wisconsin and at Arizona State, and all of my kids were under 6'3", and our running game was super. And in talking to Milt Tenneper, Milt just said he thought 6'4" was perfect, and as far as height went, he didn't like too many guys that were too tall unless they had really good athletic ability. And that makes for a different song, when you do that. But I think it's all in the kid's heart. I really do. I think if you find kids that are, 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", and they got it in their heart, they can play. And because if you go down the list of guys in the NFL, a lot of guys are taken on their size, actually, in some cases. Because the height is a big thing in the NFL, I guess they like. And I remember Dallas coming to me. I had a center who ended up playing, I think, 18 years in the NFL. He was 6'1" and 7/8", played for the Steelers for a long time, and then for the Chiefs for a couple of years, Mike Webster. And Mike, they said when their super scout came, said, well, he has to be 6'3.5" at least to be a center for the Dallas Cowboys. So, that's just each team has something different. I remember guys that we had in our offense that were, if you look at the last Outland Award winner, he was under 6. He was probably 6'2" at the most. Everybody likes to say an inch taller, but he's probably not. And so, to be a running football team, probably it's a matter of what's inside of you. I think I had a kid named Mike Murray played nose tackle for us along with Neil Smith and Tim Rother, and he looked like he was a midget. He was 5'10", 5'9", and could play. That's all I know. He could play. And if you say, is he too big? Is he too tall? No, he's not tall enough. We need him bigger. But yet he's second team All Big 8.
Charlie McBride's with us here, a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Charlie, some of the things you said there remind me of the movie Rudy. It's not about your size, it's about your heart, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of kids you're going to find out are going to really be good football players that are not real tall guys. I think when you get down to measurements and you look at the NFL, there are a lot of guys that are in that 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" range, a lot of them, and they're really good players. And some of them are, guys that are, already tall, already fast, and already mobile and can do things. And normally those kids are, ended up being very, very good players, if not All-American, some of them. And then some of them, they have to take some time. They're just growing up. They're just kids. And they need a couple of years of growth for their agility, their flexibility are the biggest thing, with their hip flexibility and so forth for an offensive lineman, and their balance. And if you get a kid that's got a good heart and has a little weakness in those parts, you take him, because he's going to probably work his way up in those departments because he's just a hard worker and a tough guy, and wants to do it.
Coach, we got about 30 seconds left here this segment. I might hold you over for another segment if you're available to do so, to just talk about Nebraska's recruiting class as a whole. But quickly, tell me about the advantage of leverage being a guy who's a little bit shorter.
Well, I think the leverage part is the feet quickness and a lot of things that do it. Coming off the ball. I think when you come off the ball, I think you'll find it. It's usually the shorter guy that kind of does that. But that doesn't mean God made them that way. God, like I said, kids that want to really be good players, they play. They find a way to play, and they do it. And so I don't worry as much about the height period at all.
It's Charlie McBride with us here, a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Charlie, you available to hang on the line for 3 minutes and get one more thought on the other side of the break here? As I want to get your take on Nebraska being at 23 kids, what that means to you and the advantage it gives the coaching staff. Can you hang on the line for me?
Okay, I can do it.
Got one more segment with Charlie McBride coming your way after the break as Hail Varsity Radio rolls forward. Next hour, Bill Doleman and Brady Oltmans join us to talk some more recruiting. That's all coming up. But right after the break, Charlie McBride, one more segment with Coach here on a Friday.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Continuing on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, as we welcome the coach, Charlie McBride, Mr. Blackstreet himself, back in for another segment here on Hail Varsity Radio. And, Coach, we appreciate you hanging on for some overtime. I got one last thought for you, and I want to get your take on where Nebraska's 2024 recruiting class currently stands. 23 kids in the boat, maybe a couple more coming here in the next couple weeks. And I want to get your thoughts on just what that means for the coaching staff as a whole. If you have your recruiting class almost completely done for the next season before you even get into fall camp, what kind of flexibility, what kind of advantage does that give you?
Well, there's a lot of schools in that boat when you really look at the numbers, but we had a limit of 25, and that was the end of that tune, and that's why we had to be a little more selective as we went down. In other words, we had to go around before the year started and say we need 2 of these, 3 of these, 4 of those. And we had to recruit that way. I think now the rule has changed over the years, and I think the first-year coaches have a little more leeway, possibly getting 5 more scholarships, if they're a first-year coach. I don't know how that goes exactly. I think, but it sure wouldn't be hard to find out. But I think maybe if that is the case, that they've got some to go a little leeway. But my looking at the recruiting up to this point was the shortness of linemen both sides of the ball a little bit, especially on offense. I think one of our rules was we had at least 3 or 4 guys on defense and 5 offensive linemen. It was kind of a number that I could go way back when we had 25. That was kind of where we stood. But I think it matters how many you have on hand, and then you can kind of go from there. So there may be enough guys on hand, say in the line, that it looks like we should be taking more when you're probably, you're at an area where you have set a limit.
It's Charlie McBride with us here, a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Charlie, we appreciate your time here today. We'll get caught up with you again on a Monday, back to your normal 5:05 time slot on Monday. So that's when we'll chat with you again. And appreciate you taking out some time on your Friday. It's a little bit out of character, or out of the normal for you.
Well, if anybody has any questions about that, they ought to call in, and we can get them maybe taken care of on Monday.
We'll do that, Charlie. We'll have another Ask Charlie segment coming your way on Monday. Charlie, enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you in a couple days, all right?
Okay, Elijah. Thanks for having me.
Yep,
Bye
thank you,
now.
Charlie. So Charlie McBride joining us on a Friday edition Hail Varsity Radio. We got plenty more coming your way next hour, as we got to get into this story on San Diego State and the Mountain West Conference. San Diego State pretty much finds themselves without a home right now. We chatted with this a couple weeks ago with Bill Doleman. He's a man that used to work for the Mountain West Conference, so excited to get his take on where San Diego State goes next. Is it the Pac-12? Well, it looks like no at the moment. The Big 12 also doesn't look like an option. The Mountain West says, well, we've already taken and accepted your exit fee, so you're gone. San Diego State finds himself without a home. We'll get Bill Doleman's take on that here in about 10 minutes, as well as Bill's thoughts on Pat Fitzgerald and his situation at Northwestern. A little bit later in the hour, we'll get Brady Oltmans in for a recruiting update. We'll talk Preston Taumua just a little bit more, and what that means for the Husker football team should he be in the boat. Also an update on Grant Brix. And with Nebraska's 2024 recruiting class filling up, we'll start taking a look ahead to some targets in Nebraska's 2025 recruiting class. And finally, we'll chat with Brady about what's coming up from the Husker football team and staff as they return to campus following a hiatus over the 4th of July holiday. Hail Varsity Radio rolls forward as hour 2 is coming your way. 9 minutes away. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back in for hour 2 of Hail Varsity Radio. We are presented by Currency. It's Elijah Herbel taking you through the show today, taking you through local news here as well on KFOR. I think we're just going to call this show today Elijah and Friends, Bill. It's been a different friend joining me every single segment. We had Chris Schmidt Joining us from Iowa for segment 1, Jacob Padilla for segment 2. It was Charlie McBride for segments 3 and 4. And now with our first segment of the second hour, we welcome you, Bill Doleman, to this show. So, Bill, it's good to see you on this shortened holiday week. We've made it to Friday already. How you been? How was the 4th?
The 4th was rather uneventful around here, although at times it's like everybody was trying to shoot off all their fireworks at once because the weather was rolling in. But, my dog handled it pretty well, which is pretty good. I do have a soundproof booth right next to me here, so he tends to go in there at times, so he was unaffected, but for the most part, not that big of a deal. I've seen a billion fireworks shows in my time. See, happy birthday, America.
Happy birthday, America. That is very true. Now, I haven't told this story on the air because I didn't want to embarrass my dog, but if we're going to go there, I will tell the story. She's 14 years old now. Bella is her name. Lovely girl. She's, always been a little bit timid around the 4th of July, but never been bad. This year, something about the fireworks in Lincoln got to her. She just lost her bladder completely in my bed on the 4th of July. So that was rough to come home to. But still love her anyway. Bella, if you're out there listening, I still love you. But Bill, let's dive right into the football here, as that's what the people come here for. And the news of the day, at least in the Big Ten and the Big Ten West, has been Pat Fitzgerald and his suspension. Schmidty joined us back in segment 1, and his take on the whole ordeal is that Northwestern's really hanging Pat Fitzgerald out to dry here, suspending him for 2 weeks right before Big Ten Media Days, which means he's going to have to field those questions at Media Days surrounding some hazing allegations at the University of Northwestern, which were proven to be true. I wanted to get your reaction because Pat Fitzgerald's a guy that at least I and Schmidty, and I think you as well, respect greatly. And this feels like Northwestern maybe taking the first step towards an eventual separation with Pat Fitzgerald as their head coach, despite everything that he's done, because they didn't do him any favors with how this news was rolled out and how the suspension's been handled.
This is a really odd story. The timing is everything about it. You're talking about a Friday of a holiday week. Mm-hmm. Friday's the Newsday dump. Then you have this happening during the dead period of college football recruiting, and every single coach in the country is probably on vacation somewhere right now for the next couple of weeks. He is suspended without pay, which sounds pretty harsh, but when you're reportedly making anywhere between $6 and $9 million a year, I'm sure he'll be okay without that 2-week paycheck. He gets to come back and start camp again. And then this whole Camp Kenosha thing, it's my understanding that since Northwestern opened up its, new practice facility, they haven't gone to Kenosha for a couple of years. But they say they can't go back. Well, I don't think they've been going back. I could be wrong. Don't live in Chicago, suburb of Fairbury. But nevertheless, it's odd that this Kenosha thing happens. And then this takes me down another rabbit trail. Why do they need to go to Kenosha? Why do these football programs need to go and get away and spend all of that money to go to someplace else when most of them have these great facilities? So I don't understand that Kenosha thing anyway, but I'm not sure they've been there recently. Okay. Then you go into and reading the article, and I've read several today, one of the quotes that stands out, it says, one claim from an anonymous whistleblower was supported. Okay, whistleblowers deserve protection and anonymity, even though player accounts varied and there was not sufficient evidence, I'm reading here, evidence coaches knew about the conduct. But then it goes on to say they could have known about the conduct and should have reported it. Well, if they didn't know about it, then how could they have reported it sooner? Okay. So the wording in all of this is fairly odd. Now, also you have to keep in mind that this is a private institution. They really don't have to say much more other than what they have done, right? But I think, look, if hazing is a serious issue, times have changed dramatically over the last, 40 plus years. So yes, you need to, take those accusations quite seriously. But I would think that the public should deserve to know what went down, right? And this can't be, no, we can't release any more information because it's our privilege as a private institution. Hazing's a difficult issue, and you got recruiting going on, right? And people are going to use this against Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald. So there's just a lot of stuff that I hope we know more. I will say this also. This kind of reminds me of Craig James, Adam James, and Mike Leach at Texas Tech. And you got to go back, 15 years ago, almost 10 years ago, when that all went down, and the accusations that Mike Leach, put Adam James in a electrical closet because he had a concussion. And then it kind of came out that he actually went in there by himself at Texas Tech, had taken precautions in not letting people who had concussions even participate at all. But why Adam James? And then there's this PR campaign that James had hired. I'm not saying Northwestern went to those extremes that Craig James did and was proven to be false. But there's something here. Maybe it's just time that they all want to break up. And this is Northwestern's way of asking for their ID bracelet back. It's kind of unsavory. I'm sure Pat Fitzgerald will be okay once all is said and done. But for this week and for this day, it sure is a hot topic of conversation.
Yeah, that was kind of the first place my mind went, Bill, in that this feels like something Northwestern can go back to at the end of the season should results be what we kind of expect for Northwestern, which is near the bottom of the Big Ten West, where you can go back and fire a coach with cause, because Pat Fitzgerald under contract until 2030. One thing we know about Northwestern is they don't tend to shell out for their athletic department all that much at all. So it kind of feels to me like something, hey, Pat, if you don't find somebody who's willing to pay your buyout this offseason so you can get moving on, we then can fire you with cause. We don't have to pay you anything, and you can go off and do your own thing. But it kind of feels like, but maybe both a coach and an athletic institution that's ready for a split.
It happens. And we've talked about this, several times on the show. Sometimes you just got to break up. Rick Barnes, Texas, going to Tennessee. It was just time to move on. Sometimes it's not acrimonious. This, again, I just find this to be odd. And given the lack of success they've had the last 2 seasons, he's a, beloved alum, or at least he was. His contract goes through 2030. 2030. So if they want to make a change, I'm guessing that privately held buyout is probably very, very significant, right? They are trying to, build a brand new stadium that they're going to want to put people in the seats. Is there a push? Is there a move? I'm just speculating here where they're thinking maybe we need a new shot in the arm to sell tickets. So we need to find a new coach to come in and get people excited. Nebraska did it. They got a new coach coming in, not building a new stadium, but look at the energy and the excitement there. That's never going to happen at Northwestern. It's the Peppermint Stop Stadium, where you can hear the bottle drop at any time, unless Nebraska's playing, and then the Husker fans sell the place out. But if this is, a precursor to making a move like that, that's going to be a tough sell. Now, I will say this. If you do read into, the Pat Fitzgerald, career, there are times where he can be a pretty old school guy. I mean, look at him. He's an old school linebacker, right? And he's, trying to maintain the ways of when he played, and, generations are changing. And some people say that maybe he is a little too old school. There is Northwestern is known for its renowned journalism college, so they probably have a lot of people there who may be protecting him. I don't know. But if they want to get rid of Pat Fitzgerald and they think this is going to be the way to do it, when they say the coaches didn't know anything about it, that buyout and that contract to 2030, boy, that is going to be an uglier fight, and more than Northwestern football will be talked about more about that than anything that they've done in the last 100 years. And
I'll just say, Bill, before we switch gears here, if I'm Pat Fitzgerald, I look at how this was treated. It really feels like he was raked across the coals here. Didn't really get much of a chance from the athletic department. I look at the Big Ten adding USC and UCLA, going divisionless, making it tougher for you every single year. And if I'm Pat Fitzgerald, I'm getting the hell out of Northwestern the first opportunity I get. That's me personally. Yeah. I'm sure, from what I've heard from you, it sounds like you're probably in the same boat there.
Yeah, and no matter how old school he might be, he's respected. The media, for the most part, respects him. I think his peers respect him. And if he were to depart Northwestern, he would be the hottest coach on the market and could get a job extremely quickly. This is not going to be a dark cloud that is going to linger over his head. Even if there are, he's an old school guy. Some places need that, including Northwestern.
Bill, while we were talking Camp Kenosha, I was thinking, where do I know Kenosha from? Kenosha is the hometown of which famous polka band?
I wish I was more up to speed like you on, great polka bands of the past. So I'm sorry that I'm sure Frankie is something. Yankovic?
Come on, no. The polka king of the Midwest. You've heard the song Polka, Polka, Polka?
Okay, Elijah, I'll humor you. Sure.
It's the Kenosha Kickers.
Okay.
Have you seen the movie Home Alone?
Oh!
The famous scene with John Candy?
Now I feel bad. Yeah.
I almost went word for word on that.
Pretty good coming up with Frankie. I felt good coming up with Frankie Yankovic.
Well, all I'll say is a legendary scene in Home Alone. If you haven't seen it, John Candy goes off the cuff with it, and I went off the cuff with that, and I think I nailed it. Polka King of the Midwest.
That's good. Yeah, good call.
Bill, before we get you out of here, let's switch gears here and talk a conference you're all too familiar with, the Mountain West Conference. They're telling San Diego State, well, we've taken your exit fee. You're not getting your buyouts right, or your media rights fee this year. You're going to be on the road, and as far as we know, in July 1st of 2024, you're no longer a member of the Mountain West Conference, but San Diego State, they don't have a landing spot. They still think they're a member of the Mountain West. This just seems convoluted. I remember we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Everything about what's going down with San Diego State and the Mountain West feels weird, feels wrong, and feels like the first big flub of conference realignment that we've seen in a while.
It feels like George Costanza, right? Quitting and then coming back to work. We were on the show together when that went down that afternoon, and I said, it's like they tried to push over a bunch of dominoes, but the first domino didn't knock anything over. And now San Diego State's domino is just laying there on a table all by itself, trying to reach for something. This is a colossal blunder on San Diego State's part. It's entirely possible they might get a Pac-12 offer at some point, but what good is that? Anybody who thinks that the Pac-12 is going to be better than the Mountain West, granted they've got Oregon and Washington for now, but if the Pac-12 was worth anything, we would know that by now. And now they're scrambling to think, and the Big 12 apparently doesn't want them, and they're talking to UConn and Fresno State. And that's a slap in the face to San Diego State if they go with Fresno or UNLV, which I don't think is going to leave the Mountain West either. But that Vegas market is hot. But San Diego State, this is a colossal blunder. And if the Mountain West should let them back in, and I would guess that they would with a penalty, perhaps that $6 million media rights fee, but then they'll let them back in at some point. And there will not be an early buyout like $17 million. If you want to leave, it's going to be $34 million. Flat out, and you are gone as soon as you say you are, if they let them back in. I do think that they will stay, right? But if I would say, in fact, I would jack up their exit fee and say, no more. You are not flirting with anybody else, and if we get wind that you're in negotiations, you will immediately no longer be a member of the Mountain West Conference in any way, shape, or form. I know the Mountain West needed San Diego State. I'm not sure that's necessarily the case right now. And how long can San Diego State maintain the success that they've had recently? You go back to Boise State a decade ago. Boise State thinks it's going to win the national championship and belongs in the Big 12 and the Pac-12 and all of that. Boise State's just, good Thursday night football on a blue field right now. And San Diego State, I know they've had a lot of success. I'm not sure they can necessarily maintain that. I love the school. I love their coaches. But this is a colossal blunder, and they better hope to God that the Mountain West will take them back and make sure it's a long-term deal or punitive if they try to go.
And Bill, how does this even happen behind the scenes? Like, is there that poor of communication from what between schools and conferences and presidents that the powers that be at San Diego State could think an offer is coming from the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 isn't going to bite on that? Is this indicative of what's going on within the Pac-12 conference? Everything about it just feels so wrong and off.
I tend to believe that some of the people at San Diego State were listening to whatever the powers who be at the Pac-12 that are left, and they were enticed by it. Maybe they were promised something on a cocktail napkin, and they believed it to be true, and it's just not coming to fruition at all. There should have been something completely ironclad that they were going to get an offer to either the Big 12 or most certainly the Pac-12 and win They didn't have anything in writing. They should have waited until that happened. And if they do have something, in writing or a promissory, they should come forward with it and stick it to the Pac-12 or the Big 12 and say, you promised, and then, try to recoup something. But I think, this kind of goes back to what we've talked about. And again, I have all the respect in the world for Nebraska's new chancellor, Rodney Bennett. Okay. And this is a great opportunity for the University of Nebraska. But Nebraska has put the athletic department in the hands of Ted Carter, a respected national figure in the world of academia and athletics, respected by Nebraska's athletic director and head football coach, and has been around the Nebraska athletic program for 2 or 3 years now. Chancellor Bennett is new. Okay. And Nebraska's athletic department is on a great trajectory right now in all sports, right? And the football program is going to get better. And you have put the man who has been here for the last couple of years, who hired the athletic director and approved the football coach and has volleyball and all of these things, softball under his hand right now. And that's great for Nebraska. As Chancellor Bennett gets, acclimated to the university, the regents have said we could let him, we could rearrange this once again and go back. But right now it's imperative that the man in charge is the man who has been in charge, or at least one of them. And I think Nebraska has to feel good about its leadership. Clearly, some of these schools who are being enticed in the era of realignment and NIL and transfer portal don't have the leadership in place to make wise decisions. We've gone through that for 20 years, and look where it's gotten us, okay? Things are going in the right direction. You have Poindexters and Gilberts and Lewises who don't understand athletics in this particular time that are trying to make decisions, and it is coming, it's turning into an awful thing for the university. And this doesn't look just bad for San Diego State athletics. It looks bad for the school and the conferences that they may be trying to go to, and the Mountain West is starting to look better and better.
It's Bill Doleman with us here at Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. Bill, our time is up. We'll have to get caught up again next week, but for now, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.
All right, very good. Go Big Red.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
A Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio rolls forward as we just heard from Bill Doleman, as Bill joined us for his weekly sit-down leading off hour 2 of our Friday show. It's Elijah and Friends continuing on here as Elijah's going through the who's who of some of our favorite guests here on Hail Varsity Radio. We're excited to welcome in Brady Oltmans to the show as Brady, it's been a slower recruiting week this week, but then a flurry here within the past 24 hours or so. How you been? Did you enjoy your time away with the 4th of July holiday as the coaching staff took a holiday as well? And you ready to get back into the grind of recruiting again?
No, but don't jinx it too hard. But I was able to get out to Branched Oak a little bit and hang out for the 4th, spend time with the pup and the family. So it was it turned out all right, and I guess I'm just happy to be back at the office right now.
Before we get into what our talking point has been for the day, Brady, which has been Preston Taumua, Grant Bricks, the offensive line, there's some steam there. Feels like things are coming together. I want to start it off with a guy we haven't had the chance to talk with you about just yet, Ja'Cory Barney from Miami, as he announced his commitment to Nebraska on Saturday evening. And he has added his name into the mix, likely going to be a wide receiver at Nebraska. I wanted to get your reaction to that pickup for Matt Rule in Nebraska and just the incursion into Miami that we've seen from this staff. It started with Willis McGahee the 4th, now Ja'Cory Barney and some other targets down there as well.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a place in the continental United States that Nebraska is targeting intentionally more than Texas, it is the Miami area. I mean, you've got on the staff, you've got Evan Cooper, went to Miami Palmetto, and then obviously Phil Sampson, the former head coach at Homestead and down there in Florida, to help kind of bring a little bit of South Dade presence to Nebraska. And obviously Nebraska historically and now on the roster now and still before 2023 and on the 2023 recruiting class, there's a presence there. Ja'Cory himself, he's just sure-handed. He just makes catches that I think you don't think should be caught. Just plainly stated. I mean, his film lights up, and even at camp and then 7-on-7 this summer, looking at some of his clips, he just flashes that ability that you just think, wow, and I don't want to say Nebraska doesn't typically get those guys, but especially when they're from Florida and South Florida, especially around Miami, those are the guys that historically Miami gets and that stay around, in that Southeast echo chamber. And I think at a certain point, Ja'Cory was one of those guys that even the Nebraska coaching staff did not think they were going to get. I think they got a feeling that Miami had the inside track on there, but in the end, Nebraska was able to close that gap and get ahead, and Garrett McGuire comes up with another big get. I mean, I think Ja'Cory is the 10th receiver or possible receiver in Nebraska's recruiting shoehorn since this new staff got here, and all 10 of them are pretty good athletes. And I think that's a tip to the cap to Garrett McGuire and what the staff was able to do.
And you talked about the fact that Barney's a guy that Miami typically locks up. And if you go look, when Matt Rule on Twitter last weekend, he posted the picture of him holding up the 305, which is Miami's area code. If you go check the replies on that tweet, there's a lot of upset Miami fans about that. Does this feel like something that Matt Rule wants to continue, this incursion into Miami? He's gotten a couple kids this class. Is this something that he's looking at as being a potential recruiting base for Nebraska in 2025 and beyond?
I think so. They have, again, they've got coaches on staff right now who have a history of coaching high school kids at that level, and they've got a good reputation and a good relationship with high school coaches in Florida. Now, having said that, I think Matt Rule has the full intention of going to every single state in the country and having a good relationship and a good reputation with schools across the country. I think he wants every other school in the country to say, oh no, we have to compete with Nebraska for this kid. And this is just a byproduct of that. It's really interesting when I looked at Ja'Cory, it really came down to Nebraska and Miami in a lot of ways, and just Miami's situation and where they are in comparison to with Nebraska. You could really say that they are on par a little bit. I guess results wise, Miami might be in a little bit better position than Nebraska was, but in terms of like buzz and potential around both programs, it's kind of unique. And I think Ja'Cory seeing the potential or seeing the growth at Miami, the staff's ability to get guys in the league, and their track record of getting quick turnarounds within a couple of years, I think came out ahead and helped to make the decision here.
Brady, are there any other guys in the class of 2024 from Miami that Husker fans should know about, maybe being guys that could be in this class here in the next weeks and months? Because the class is starting to fill up. We're going to get to Preston Taumua and Grant Bricks here in a second, but you're about to hit that 25 number. Are there any other names in 2024 that you think Husker fans, or at least the Husker coaching staff, has a good chance at?
Maybe not necessarily from Miami. I think the Miami South Dade area, in terms of 2024 prospects, I think Nebraska would be an extreme outside contender for anybody else in there. They have their best shot going 25 and beyond there. The outside of Bricks, outside of the two linemen that have been gaining steam with Nebraska recently, I still think one of the receivers I've heard good things, and I've just talked with Ernest Campbell's coach over at Ruferio recently, and said that talked very highly about his visit to Nebraska. And then Gatlin Bear still a possibility, although I think Michigan probably has the best chance right now, but we'll see how things go after official visits happen a couple months from now.
And I guess I'll pass on a question from Charlie McBride. He was wondering what the rules are with the NCAA with a first-year head coach, how many guys you're allowed to get in that recruiting class, because it was his memory, 25 was always your cap for every single recruiting class. How many can Matt Rule and his staff get to here in this cycle?
Well, it's, to paraphrase from Mean Girls, the limit does not exist. It's one of those weird kind of esoteric bylaws that the NCAA has now, that one school does it and then every other school that this applies for just kind of opens it up like a can of worms. But I think that they want to stick around the 25 number. I don't think it's just a grab bag of just stuff and get however many kids you can, because I think that they're conscientious of the roster crunch that could happen next year, and then how maybe some players might feel at the end of this upcoming season, where there's transfer portal, if they feel pressure one way or another. So it's one of those touchy things, but I guess the simple answer to Charlie's question is that Nebraska isn't bound to 25 like they would have been in previous years.
All right, then let's talk about the two guys that could get Nebraska to 25 as Brady Oltmans joins us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And to answer a question from the stream from Tim, he says, this guy looks like Ed Sheeran. Could it be? No, unfortunately. Brady Oltmans is much better than Ed Sheeran because Ed Sheeran doesn't know recruiting. So Brady Oltmans, the man with his finger on the pulse. Have you ever gotten that one before?
Only a couple of times. I believe that if I have been paid for every time I've gotten it, I might be able to buy Ed Sheeran a time or two. But that's just where we are, man.
So it's Brady Oltmans here with us on Hail Varsity Radio, and the two guys that we've heard a lot about within the past couple of days, two offensive linemen, Preston Taumua from Hawaii as well as Grant Brix from Logan, Iowa. And my question with these two guys is could they both be guys that Nebraska could get into this class? This isn't a case of Nebraska having a backup plan for Preston with Grant Brix or vice versa. Is it because the way that this team has seemingly been building in Nebraska's favor, it would get Nebraska to 5 offensive linemen, and from what I can see, likely a guy in every single position along that offensive line. It feels like these are two guys that could complete Nebraska's efforts on the offensive line in their class of 2024. What kind of read are you getting from these guys, and which direction is their recruitment trending, at least in terms of Nebraska?
Well, they're both really interesting. I think that it's not really a case of a plan A or plan B. I think they're both plan A's at this point. I think Nebraska would be willing to accept commitments from both of them. And Preston and Grant kind of do different things. I mean, Grant is built right now like he is ready to step on campus, as an early enrollee and compete at a Big Ten level. I think Preston is viewed more of he's got a good build to him, and he's got a lot of potential that you could put on his frame. But he's one of those guys that I think could adjust. He's got that snarl to him, you know what I mean? And he's got that meanness and that work ethic that Matt Rule, Donovan Rayola, and I guess Marcus Satterfield really like to have in those offensive linemen and what they've been looking for since they arrived. Both I think would be really good pickups. And I wonder if part of it is Nebraska felt really good in getting both of them, or felt good on their chances, to where, you've got guys like Caleb Pye from Omaha Central, who just, goes to Illinois instead. Great decision for him, great opportunity for him to stick in the Big Ten. But maybe if the coaches just don't feel as good about their chances with these two, maybe they make a stronger push to keep Caleb in state, because they were in good standing to do that at a certain point. So, I mean, Grant and Preston, there's a reason why Nebraska coaches are so high on them. They both bring a lot to the table, and it's I don't know. It seems like Grant might be in a little better position to land in Nebraska than Preston, but that's just I guess West Coast connections there. It's just always tough in my mind, always tough hurdle to climb for them. But they'd both be really good gets for this coaching staff.
And Preston's been the hot name of the day because of the way some crystal balls have gone over the past 24 hours, some flips from Oregon to Nebraska in terms of predictions of where he's going to end up. Whenever you look at him, 6'4", 315, some recruiting services has him as an interior offensive lineman. Others has him as an offensive tackle. And I want to get your take on, do you know where Nebraska would want to have him at? Because his film, at least to me, from the offensive tackle position has been impressive, and I think he could be a guy that could slot in there in the Big Ten despite only being in that 6'4" frame.
Yeah, I'm with you. I haven't heard exactly a definitive position if the coaching staff has him in their minds labeled interior on the tackle, if they like him at the guard, or if they wanted to, long shot, I guess, move him to the center. In my mind, I would imagine that they keep him at guard or tackle. But when I look at his film and when I kind of evaluate him from my own eyes, I really like what he does at tackle. He's got a good body frame to be able to hold off strong guys on the exterior, but also he's got a decent enough lateral quickness to be able to keep up and maybe brush guys off to the side, or at least, hold his own against some speedier edge rushers and things. So I think he offers you a lot there, but also to the point, he's got a lot of potential to where if they wanted to mold him a little bit more on the interior, they could focus his energy and efforts there.
So Brady Oltmans with us here, a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Brady, I whenever we were talking about this segment before the show, I said I wanted to get some class of 2025 guys. Would you have a few minutes to hang around after the break and discuss a little bit the class of 2025?
Absolutely, my guy.
Love it. Brady Oltmans going to join us for one more segment here on Hail Varsity Radio. We'll get into the class of 2025, and also as the coaching staff and team returns from their 4th of July break, we'll get into what the next couple of weeks look like ahead of Big Ten Media Days and ahead of fall camp again. Brady Oltmans, find him and follow him on Twitter at Brady Oltmans, and we'll get a little more time with him after the break. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Nearing the end of a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, it's Elijah Herbel taking you through this show today as Schmidty's off watching his son play some baseball. It does sound like he's going to be back in for a Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio tomorrow from 7:40 until 9, as we've got Brandon Vogel and Gary Sharp joining us on the Saturday morning edition as well, so you can check that out online only, the Saturday morning show in 7:40 to 9. Wherever you watch Hail Varsity Radio or listen online, you can listen there. Not over the air. We've been doing that for a couple months now, and we really like the opportunities that it presents to us. But we've got one more segment here with Brady Oltmans, talking some recruiting and also talking about how this summer is going to finish up for the Husker football program. And Brady, whenever we look at this class of 2024 filling up, already at 23 guys, could be at 25, maybe even a little bit more than that before the start of the 2023 season. I don't have any inside information there, but based on the way the momentum is going there, I'd expect a couple more guys to be in the boat. And one of the benefits I think that gives the Husker football team is that the way it's going to allow them to focus on the class of 2025, which seems so far off at this point, guys that are entering their junior year of high school. But there's already some names, especially around the state of Nebraska, guys that are differentiating themselves in the class of 2025. And I want to get your thoughts on some early names that you think Husker fans should be watching in terms of guys that are probably going to be high priority, high profile targets for this Husker football class.
Oh, man. Well, right away, I think one name that stands out, Pierre Allen Jr. is one that really shines through. He is at Lincoln Southeast, but he got an opportunity this last week. He announced an opportunity to play at IMG Academy. So we'll see what comes out of that. I mean, watching him last year, he showed that, high potential, high ceiling kid. They're just the things that he does off the edge for that Southeast team, even as a sophomore. It showed like he's got room to grow, certainly. But his potential definitely jumped off the field. But the big name probably, if you had to bring it down to one, Christian Jones, Omaha West Side linebacker, who is just an incredible athlete. I mean, he's got an offer from Texas A&M now, heavily recruited by Notre Dame. He's going to be a guy that Nebraska is probably going to have to fight very hard, and in order to keep in state. I think Oklahoma was very high on him this last week and in camp season. So he's going to be another guy, big motor, big mobility. And he fights on a tough West Side team that's kind of got a pipeline to Lincoln right now. So those are the two that's kind of jump out to me right now.
What about the quarterback from Omaha North, Sebastian Serko?
Oh man, Sebastian's an interesting case because he can really sling it. I mean, he's a good, promising young athlete. He showed out at camp. He shows out at 7-on-7. He's got great ball placement. I think that he's one Nebraska's high on. I mean, he came through in the spring, came through in the summer, and I think he's one that could definitely make another stamp and certainly visit Nebraska a lot more this upcoming season and let the coaching staff kind of get a better idea of him, let him see himself playing as a Husker, and then from there on, really kind of dangle the line to the Husker coaches and make it difficult for them this upcoming season with his play to say like, hey, we want to get 2 in-state quarterbacks here coming up. But he's, especially if Stone Saunders ends up going to Kentucky or committing to Kentucky, as has been rumored. I mean, he's been tied to Nebraska a lot too. I think that might help kind of push Nebraska coaches along in Sebastian's direction.
And can we get a quick update on Stone Saunders with the Kentucky connection? He's a guy that feels like he's been pretty interested in Nebraska during this process. Feels like Matt Rule and the staff have been really putting in the legwork on Stone Saunders. But what's the update with him and his recruitment?
Well, I heard all the Kentucky buzz, and I take it with a grain of salt because anytime that you talk to a kid right after an official visit, outside of actual commitments, the kid's going to be riding high off of that visit. and is going to talk very highly about them, as he's done with Kentucky. And I not to say that he didn't enjoy his time at Kentucky. I'm sure he did. But I think once the dust is settled on visits and everything, those are the two big blue blood programs that stand out. I mean, one is a Big Ten program that's kind of got a new head coach seemingly on its way back up to its old ways. And then you've got an SEC program that is interesting. I mean, just constantly interesting. So I think there are two diametrically different programs at this time, but Stone's going to kind of continue to go through. He's in no rush to make his commitment right now, but he's going to kind of go through, and Nebraska's got some options depending on what he does.
All right, Brady, last thought here in recruiting. It's a trivia question for you, and I wonder if you know it off the top of your head. You mentioned Pierre Allen Jr. He gets the invite to IMG Academy. Do you know who the last Lincoln Southeast Knight was to receive an invite to IMG Academy?
Paducah.
No. If it helps you out, this individual was in the same graduating class as me, and we had a couple years playing football together before this individual left for IMG Academy.
Oh, man. Okay. Now I got to try to figure out how old you are.
Class of 2017.
Okay, well, I am older than you by a couple more years.
Well, one final hint for you, Brady. This individual ended up playing for the University of Nebraska.
Okay. Who would that have been? I know that I should know this name because that was about I had already left the paper by that time, and I'd already gone over to Wyoming. I'm going to say Jonathan Candy.
It's a close one. No, actually, it's not close at all. Brock Bando.
Oh, wait. No, yeah, you're right. For whatever reason, I probably lumped Bando in with Josh Banderas, and I think he went to Southwest. But you're right. He went to Southeast.
Yeah, Brock Bando made it through freshman year, and then he made it through sophomore year. And then right at the start of fall camp, junior year, off goes Brock Bando, and he's down to IMG Academy. And there goes our best offensive and defensive lineman. It was a real tough blow for the Lincoln Southeast football program. I can't lie to you.
Well, you're not bitter about it at all.
No, not at all. I don't think it completely ruined the results of our senior season by any means. Brady, last thought here before I get you out. What's coming up from the Husker coaching staff and the Husker team here in the next couple weeks as they get geared up for fall camp and media days? I know the coaching staff returns to Lincoln this weekend if they haven't already, and they're going to be ramping right back up into OTAs.
Oh, well, the coaching staff, I think, is getting together and kind of determining the direction that they want to take things this fall, make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then the players themselves are back in workouts. I can tell you they've been hitting it really hard in summer workouts and lifting and everything. Just an allegorical, or I guess, case, Prince William Ellen is trying to gain 20 pounds, or has already gained 20 pounds, I should say, since arriving on campus in January. And he wants to play at 250 or 255, and he's still got a ways to go, but, from now and then. And then we've all seen what Gabe Ervin looks like now. And so it's amazing to think of what this coaching staff could do in the next 3 weeks or so of lifting before, we get into media days, and then basically fall camp is here already. So it's going to be a sprint to, the finish until the sprint all over again when they put pads on.
Well, Brady Oltmans joining us here on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. You can find and follow Brady on Twitter for all his recruiting coverage. That's at Brady Oltmans. Brady, hope you enjoy your weekend. We appreciate you taking some overtime with us here on a Friday. 2 full segments with Brady. We'll have this posted up in podcast form. Brady, enjoy your weekend. We'll chat with you next week. All right, bud?
We'll see you around, man.
There he is, Brady Oltmans. Again, you can always find his coverage on Twitter on hailvarsity.com as well. And while I'm at it, get yourself a discounted copy of Hail Varsity magazine. Get yourself some coverage. Go to hailvarsity.com/offer for a either monthly or annual discount to Hail Varsity magazine, including all the online coverage. It's a great opportunity for you. It's been the Elijah and Friends Hail Varsity Radio Show. We'll wrap it up after this as we're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time here on a Friday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all of your equipment financing needs, go Currency. It's been Elijah Herbel taking you through this Friday edition of the show, as Schmidty has had Wednesday, Thursday, as well as today off this week. We will, I think, as it currently stands, get an appearance from Schmidty tomorrow. The baseball schedule has lined up. I think he's going to join our Saturday morning show. We'll let you know about that here in just a second. But first, let's let you know what you missed on today's show. If you're just checking in with us here, or maybe you're checking back in after taking some time away, as it's been Elijah and Friends. That's what I've called it here today. As every single segment, I have sat down with a new friend, and we've made it happen. Talks Musker football. We started off back in segment 1. Schmidty joined us from his front passenger seat in Iowa as he was getting all set for a baseball game. They're waiting for some rain to blow over. That's the same storm that hit much of southeastern Nebraska today. It got to Iowa by about midday, and they were waiting for that to blow through so they could hit the baseball diamond. So Schmidty and I talked a little bit about Pat Fitzgerald, as well as his thoughts on Preston Taumua, Grant Bricks, two guys that Nebraska seems to be trending in the right direction for. At 4:25, second segment of our first hour, we sat down with Jacob Padilla, talked some hoops. Sam Griesel and Delano Banton playing together for the Boston Celtics Summer League team, as well as his thoughts on the debut upcoming tonight of Victor Wembanyama. We had Charlie McBride join us on a Friday, which I think might be the first time we've ever had Charlie check in on a Friday. We couldn't sit down with him on Monday because of the holiday weekend, therefore moved him to Friday, and we got some really good insight from Charlie McBride on smaller offensive linemen. That's been a trend for Nebraska here in this class of 2024, and we talked with Charlie about that. In hour 2, we've had Bill Doleman join us, as well as Brady Oltmans for an extended sit-down, as Brady joined us for his usual recruiting roundup, but we were really in depth on some of the remaining targets for Nebraska in the class of 2024, as well as some early guys to watch out for in 2025. So that's everything that we've had on the show today. If you missed any of it, check us out in podcast form: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or Apple Music as well. If you prefer the video version, you can watch us live on the Hail Varsity Twitter page. That is H Varsity Radio, at H Varsity Radio, I should say. You can also find us on the Hail Varsity YouTube page every single day from 4 to 6. You can see our beautiful faces as we take you through the show today. Today it's just been me, which I'm sorry for the people at home that have been watching the video feed, I should say. You've been stuck with my face, so I do apologize for that. We'll get Schmidty back in it tomorrow, hopefully. Again, that's 7:40-ish till about 9, as we're going to have Chris Schmidt and myself take you through the Saturday morning show. Mark Kranak maybe still up in the air, but we do know we have Brandon Vogel and Gary Sharp joining us on the Saturday morning edition. Brandon will join us at about 8 o'clock, and then Gary will check in at about 8:30. So for those of you maybe want to sleep in just a little bit, get a little bit of extra sleep, you can still see Brandon at 8 if you miss our first opening segment, and you can still see Gary at 8:30 if you miss Brandon at 8. Again, you can find that show wherever you find us online, that is in podcast form, shortly following the conclusion of the Saturday morning show, or you can follow along live. The Hail Varsity YouTube page is a great option to do that, as well as at H Varsity on radio, or our home station, KFOR. Both the Facebook and Twitter accounts of KFOR Radio will have Hail Varsity Radio tomorrow from about 7:40 until 9 a.m., so that's when we'll talk to you again. It's Elijah Herbel signing off on this Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. We thank you for joining me. It's been an adventure sitting here solo in the studio, running the board, doing the host, and talking to a lot of friends. Had a lot of fun. It went maybe better than I even expected. So if you enjoyed the show today, leave us a review, leave us a rating wherever you listen to us. We'd appreciate that. It's what pays the bills. And with that being said, we'll talk to you tomorrow. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency.